welcome to today's Oil for the Journey oil change. And this is based on Deuteronomy chapter 26 through 28. And I am your reader, Denise Joyner. So I just wanted to point out two things from what we read in Deuteronomy 26 through 28. And before I point out those two things, I just want to set a context geographically for the children of Israel. So they were brought out of Exodus, the children of Israel, by Moses, their leader, the prophet Moses. And in particular, God chose this group of people. And I would venture to say that they were both an ethnic group and not an ethnic group, if that makes sense, because God made way for foreigners who wanted to become Israelites or to be a part of the followers of Yahweh to join them. He made provision for them to join. If they wanted to be circumcised and follow God's law, hey, come on along. That was what Yahweh graciously offered them. So they were a mixed bag of people, the Israelites. Nonetheless, they were particularly chosen to come to the land of Canaan. Now, that was the land of promise. And you may ask, why Canaan? Well, Canaan geographically was located in ancient times strategically between three large continents and a plethora of people groups. Africa, Asia, and European continents all kind of converged at this point in the land of Canaan. In addition to that, the Canaanite region was surrounded by very pagan nations and societies. And all the law, all the law that Yahweh, the Lord Most High, gave to the Israelites were in direct opposite to the way these pagan nations were living and conducting their daily lives. So with one another and with their idol gods. So when God said, "You will serve no other idol before me," that was because He wanted the Israelites to be a distinct nation, different than their pagan neighbors. And their pagan neighbors served many idols and did some really crass things in their idol worship. And Yahweh didn't want that for His people who He had chosen, the Israelites. So they were pulled out of Egypt, brought to this particular land to be an example of how to live following the one true God, Yahweh, and how they will be blessed as a result. So the two things I want to point out here is that in chapter 26, verse 12, is that the tithe here was set out specifically for the most oppressed and maligned, or the lowest part of society. I didn't want to say lowest, but lack of words here right now. But the ones that were most in need. And they were the Levites, who were priests. They were the widows, they were the orphans, and they were the foreigners. And why these people? Because these people didn't have land of their own. And they didn't have land of their own, which was the means of provision in an agrarian society, because they didn't have men that were able to work those lands. So they were often very poor and often oppressed, used because of their poverty. Sounds familiar? I digress. But needless to say, God made provision for those people, for foreigners, for Levites, which were the priests whose responsibility was to attend to the temple's needs, making all the sacrifices for the children of Israel. And as a result, the orphans, the widows, they didn't have much, but God made provision. Everybody else was supposed to bring them a tenth of what they had. Their first fruits, a matter of fact, the best of what they had. So that's verse 12 in chapter 26 of Deuteronomy. And I just want to compare chapters 27 and 28, where chapter 27 in the beginning, the blessings are named if they're obedient, if the children of Israel is obedient. But then from chapter 27, verse 14, all the way to the end of chapter 28, it's all the curses. And the curses are multiplicative in their effect on the children of Israel compared to the blessings. The blessings you could basically name in one hand. But comparatively speaking, the curses are far way more worse. If that makes some sense. They're exponentially greater curses. And that is to say that consequences of sin are often greater than just the motivation, plain obedience. So if we obey and experience the blessing of God for our obedience, which is what God is saying here, He will just bless your life. The work that you put your hands to do will be blessed. Your womb will be blessed with children. Provision will be made for your household financially, economically. And if you disobey, Lord have mercy. He was to dissuade you from being disobedient because it was just far worse. You'd be turned into a slave, among other things. Slave to people who don't even speak your language and understand your ways. And it was really just a warning. It's better to obey, far much more better to obey than to be cursed for your disobedience. So I hope that helps you today in the oil change for Deuteronomy chapters 26 through 28. May God bless you.